Hello chess friends and welcome to Zara's Chess channel and welcome to the TCEC Season 16 Premier Division. So if you have followed this Season 16, first we had the qualifying rounds, then we had the second division, first division, and now this Premier Division. The best two engines of this Premier Division will play then in the super final. In the Season 15 we had the clash Leela Zero against Stockfish, but I think in the Season 16 we will have again the same finals, because Leela Zero and Stockfish, I think they're simply too powerful against this other top engines like Komodo, Fire, Stu Fleece, Scorpion, and many of these other great engines. They're really also very powerful, but Leela Zero and Stockfish, I think they're simply from another dimension. And today I wanted to show you the game from round 7 between Leela Zero and Komodo, and it really changed sort of my opening preparation in one particular line in this Slav defense, this quiet variation. It's really called the quiet variation. And one particular move, the move c5, I'll show you in the continuation of the game, really surprised me, because I thought that it wasn't maybe sort of a opening theory move, but it really was a breaking move. It was really a positional pawn breakthrough, and the Komodo, I think, didn't find any counterplay in the continuation of the game. And in the continuation you see also a brutal and immortal queen sacrifice by Leela Zero. So let's see the game. c4 here by Leela Zero, c6, now knight on f3, knight on f6, and now d4. You can transpose here maybe to a perch defense setup, but here after d5 the move order was a little bit different. But now we have the Slav defense, and now we have e3 played by Leela Zero. If you play something like knight on c3, then we have this very annoying check variation for white. Here you have to play a4, bishop on f5, e3, and after e6 bishop on b4. I think black has a comfortable game. Black has equalized the position in an early stage of the game, although it's still common theory. It's simply, I think, a good line here to play as black. So as said here, in the continuation, a6 was played by Komodo. Here Leela played bishop on d3, and the problem from black's perspective is if you try something like d takes on c4, bishop takes on c4, and now this common b5 move, in order to get a tempo, we can play simply bishop on d3. And if you try something like c5, basically the game transposes now into queen's gambit accepted. And now you can play simply d takes c5 after knight on c6 castling. Maybe e6 can be played, but now simply a4 breaks really the space advantage that black has created here. So you have to play something like b4, although you have gained some space here from black's perspective, but you have also left some spaces behind after maybe queen on e2 and bishop on c5. Knight on d2 can be played, and then now bishop on b7. You see, this rook and the bishop are always stuck to the defense of this a6 pawn, and if you advance the pawn here on a5, then we can improve the position of the bishop, still with some possibilities here maybe after castling. If black castles here, then we can play something like e4, knight on c4, then bishop on g5. Seems really dangerous, so white will have a great coordination of pieces here. So that's why it's not good to take immediately here this pawn. That's why bishop on g4 was played. And this is now Komodo's positional idea, building first the fortress here on like squares and creating a pin, because now we can battle also with the move b5 and try maybe some outposts here with the knight on e4. That's why here a knight on d2 was played first, and now after knight on d7, queen on c2, getting out of the pin. And now we have possibilities to recapture with the knight, bishop, or the queen. Depends on the position, of course. And here e6 played by Komodo. Now we have b3. If you try immediately, that's the move that I've talked about. This c5 move really surprised me here by Leela Zero. It wasn't played now in this particular moment. I just wanted to show you what happens if you play the move c5 now. Then you can play something like g6, and after castling bishop on g7, and the idea is to really play this move e5 to crack the position with the move e5, and you see white will have then this d4 weakness, and it's really hard to battle against this potential pawn breakthrough of black. So that's why Leela C0 played first this positional setup with b3, fixing now the position, getting a flexible pawn structure here. After bishop on d6, now we have castling, and now bishop on h5. The idea here is, if you try from white's perspective something like h3 here, the black's idea is after maybe bishop on h5 and g4 to play bishop on g6, and after trades of bishops, maybe here if you try something like, I don't know, b3, we can take, and now you see this activity after bishop on d6 is much better than this bishop's activity, because black has all of the pawns on light squares, white has all of the pawns on dark squares, so this bishop is a little bit blocked out by its own pawn. So from this bishop's perspective, black would have an advantage here. So that's why here b3, Leela didn't even bother to kick away this bishop. Here bishop on d6 was played, as I said, castling, and now bishop on h5. This is now this positional idea of Komodo's, again to try this bishop on g6 in order to trade off this light square bishops, but it comes now with a different move order, and you see Leela didn't play any moves like h3, g4, so Leela didn't weaken the king side, and Leela also didn't lose some tempos in order to kick away the bishop. So we are waiting Komodo here to play the move bishop on g6, and you see Komodo will need many moves in order to make this happen. So that's why here Leela C0 simply developed, and you see now it's move 10. Leela C0 has finished the development. We have castle, we have played with all of our minor pieces, and now queen on c7 played by Komodo. And now comes this idea. Now Leela C0 plays the move c5. Great move, I think, because now if you want to play something like, as I mentioned before, you cannot play now anymore the move g6 in order to maybe get this bishop and this e5 pawn breakthrough. So that's why it's perfectly fine now to kick away the bishop. The bishop has to retreat here on e7, and you see you cannot play something like knight on e4 to create an outpost ourselves, and you cannot also play the move e5 because we have a perfect control of the e5 square with this bishop on b2 and this knight on f3. So Leela C0 has already gained some space, and I always thought that you can challenge here this pawn with the move b6 here after g3. If you try something like b6, we can simply, I think, play b4, and after a5 we can also continue with a3. After trades of pawns, you see we are still having the space control, and still you cannot play the move e5. We have basically just improved white's position, because you see black needs to castle, and we can really play faster on this a and b file. So after castling, as said, here c5, bishop on e7, and now g3 was played, and now we have a5 and now a3. Now comes this idea, of course, to play the move b4 and fix our space advantage on the queen side. So castling b4, we have bishop on g6, and now bishop takes on g6, h takes g6, and okay, you see this bishop, this dark square bishop, is a little bit blocked out by its own pawns. But it's now a difference, because this bishop is also blocked out by our own pawns. So the activity of these bishops is, let's evaluate like equal, but still with the space advantage here Leela C0 has some winning chances. So although the evaluation here is equal for both sides, still the space advantage is really annoying here. The c5 pawn is really I think annoying here to handle for black. You still cannot play the move e5 in order to improve the position, maybe to create a pawn breakthrough. That's why here bishop on c3 was played by Leela, simply forcing now black to simplify the position with the move 8x b4, because the threat is of course for us to take here b takes on a5, so that's why this pawn has to be taken. 8x b4, and now rook on b8. Now Komodo transposed all of this attacking pieces on the queen side, of course with some b6 pawn breakthrough possibilities to crack really the space advantage. King on g2. This king on g2 is very important, you'll see in the continuation of the game, because it leaves us now a flexible rook possibility, because we can transpose here this rook on h1 and create a flank attack with the move h4, h5, h6 even maybe, and here the queen is aiming on this very weak h7 square, so this king on g2 is already attacking preparation here by Leela Zero. Knight on e8, we have rook on b1, and here if you try bishop on f6 in order to play this move e5, you see you cannot, you have to prepare this move very patiently. Now Leela Zero could have played simply e4, and if you try to this pawn breakthrough, you see we can simply take. After trades of pieces, we can play e takes d5, after c takes d5, bishop takes on e5, queen takes, and now we have a position in which black has an isolated pawn, so it's a weakness, and I think Leela would have won this game very easily, because we don't want to have these weak pawns. You see white has two connected pawns. This weakness is really a target, so that's why you see this bishop on f6 idea is also not working. So basically e5 is impossible to play, and now Komodo has to search other possibilities to get some kind of an activity. So after rook on b1, queen on c8 was played, liberating now this square for the knight, and of course here Komodo can maybe try an outpost on b5. Here h4 was played. You see now this idea of Leela Zero is really a simple one, now to open the h file and creating some checkmate threats on h7. So white is faster on the attack here, knight on c7, and now rook on h1 with the same idea, knight on b5, and now rook on e1, of course also the preparation to play the move e4. This e4 is really dangerous, because we could have some discovered attacks on this bishop on e7, so black will need again a tempo in order to get away with this bishop. So it's all about tempos now. Who is faster on the attack will probably win the game. Again, I'm pointing out the evaluation here is equal, but I think from white's perspective you have more ideas to win this game. Here black is a little bit blocked out, black's pieces are a little bit paralyzed here. Knight on a3 was played. Okay, you can create this tempo, but now queen on c1, knight on b5, and now comes this move e4. If you take the bishop, it's not a problem. We can play queen on c3, and then again with the e5 move really block out this weak bishop. So basically we have solved our problems with the weak bishop on c3, because it was blocked out. So that's why this trades of pieces wouldn't be favorable for black. So that's why Komodo didn't take hit right here the move queen on f8, getting some defensive resources around black's king. And now Leela Zero continued to play on this like square possibilities on this h7 square. I'm pointing again out, this is very important weakness here in black's position. Knight on a3, we have queen on d3 staying on this diagonal, very important. And now Komodo played knight on b5 again. We have bishop on b2, and now knight on c7. This is loss of tempo, I think. Now it gives Leela Zero a decisive tempo. Here bishop on c1 was played, and now you see we have accomplished that. Now all of these pieces are aiming on the king side. This rook's, this knight, this bishop, the queen is also aiming. So we have now a perfect attack here against black's king. Of course we have to make that happen with some pawn breakthroughs, even if we have to sacrifice some pawns just in order to open position, because black is a little bit lacking of defenders here around the black's king, because these pieces, although they're near to the king, but we'll still need many moves in order to somehow help the king out here with some defensive resources. Here b6 was played. Now finally comes this move, b6. I think it's a little bit too late to break the position now on the queen side. Komodo has delayed this move too much, I think, and now comes e5 again, blocking the position out. Now we have two advanced pawns. We have a huge space advantage here in the center of the board. Now knight on a6 was played, bishop on a3, again protecting, bishop on c1, and here rook on a4. And it seems that this is a great attack now for black, because black can take maybe the pawn, and you have to maybe retreat with your queen. But here Leela Zero played very actively and played the move knight on g5. If you try something like knight rook takes on b4, it becomes very dangerous here. You can play simple knight on f3. After b takes on c5, you see you don't have to react even. Leela Zero has prepared here a brutal attack. You can play simply on your idea to play the move h5 to open the position. After bishop takes on g5, you have to get rid of at least of one of these knights. Knight takes on g5, and after rook takes on d4, we can play again queen on e2. You see we have still at least one pawn that's creating this very important space advantage. If you try c4 here, then we can simply take g6, f takes g6, and now rook on h7, very dangerous. After queen on f5, rook on h1, and I think it's game over here, because now this rook's activity is huge one, and I think black is completely lost here. So that's why you see here Komodo didn't dare to take the pawn on b4, and the great thing about Leela is that Leela didn't react here, simply left this pawn hanging, left also this pawn hanging. Just the coordination and the direction of this attack, of this attacking pieces, and the activity of these pieces is a huge one. So that's why Komodo is basically lost here. B takes c5 was played. Now b takes c5, you see we again have a firm pawn structure. Rook on b4 was played, and now knight on f3, defending this d4 pawn, because now it's not possible to give up this pawn, because now Komodo has brought both of these rooks in the attack, which can also be used as a defensive resource. Again, at least try to maybe trade off these rooks on the fourth rank. And now bishop takes on g5 was played. H takes g5, you cannot take of course with the knight on g5, then you lose simply this pawn on d4. Queen on a8 was played, and now queen on e3. You see Leela Zero is trying to sneak in queen on f4, queen on h4, and now queen on h8 with some checkmate threats. Here queen on a6 was played, queen on f4, king on f8, and now rook on h8, king on e7. And you can pause the video and try to find a brutal move. It's unbelievable. It really surprised me. It's a great sacrifice, and the game was over after this move. And it's the move, of course, queen on f6 with a check. Unbelievable queen sacrifice. If you try something like g takes on f6, then we have g takes f6, knight takes e takes f6. If you try king on d7, then it's knight on e5, checkmate even. So that's why here after queen on f6 we have now a different move order, but with the same idea. G takes f6, king has to take on f6, and now bishop on g5. You see the importance of this bishop to transpose from bishop on b2 and then on c1. And the funny thing is that this bishop was basically the worst piece on the board. It became now the best piece on the board here from white's perspective. Leela Zero sacked the queen. The king has to retreat here on g7. Here, that's why rook on h1. Now we have some checkmate threats on h7. That's why here queen on f1 had to be played in order to deflect the king a little bit and get a tempo. Now rook takes on f1, and now rook on a8, rook takes on a8, knight takes on a8, and many moves were played in the continuation of the game, but I'm not going to show you the whole game. This is now decisive advantage with the piece up here. Leela Zero of course won the game. Let's go back here. Very important, queen on f6 here. sacking the queen. Unbelievable. This activity of this rook is a huge one. After this, the bishop comes very powerful into the game. Great queen sacrifice. You see, you can't take it with the pawn, you can take it with the knight, but it's basically game over. So let's go also a little bit back to this very important moment that Leela Zero realized in this in the continuation. This move here after a queen on c7, this c5 move, really after bishop on e7, Leela Zero never allowed with some bishop on f6 idea to push the pawn here on e5. It's the main idea in these types of setups. This is the so-called pawn of formation of pawns in the center when you get this advanced pawns. But this e5 was never happen in the game, and you see really Komodo got pushed away and didn't find counterplay at all. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it a lot. I'll try to follow as much as I can this season 16 with this Premier Division, and of course we will have then the super final. I'm expecting again it will be Stockfish against Leela Zero. We'll see what will happen in the continuation of this tournament. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games played by computers, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.